Here we go. I'm all right now. Well, welcome to the Montague Parker Lecture Series, and we're very pleased today to have Keith, right, with us today, and Keith and his wife Ruth lead Mill Grove, a Christian residential community that has been caring for children in the East End of London since 1899. A visiting tutor at Spurgeons College since 1978, he is founder of the Child Theology Movement. Since 1997, he has been studying the life and work of Pandita Ramabai, culminating in the book Pandita Ramabai, 1858 to 1922, Let the Earth Hear Her Voice. Among his other books are In His Image, The Growth of Love, The Art of Faith, In the Meantime, Reflections of Living with Children, 3 volumes, and the NIrV, Bible Narrative and Illustrated. Yeah. All right, so with that.
Now, I'm just greetings to those of you who, as far as I'm concerned, are south of me, the Abingdon end of the room. On screen, and greetings to those of you at the north end. This is the Summertown and Blenheim Palace end of the room. Good to be here again. I've often come to OCMS. My heart is closer than my home, and one of my colleagues, Adam Wilmer, was a co-founder of the Child Theology Movement. I had the privilege of 12 years of tutorials with Adam in writing the book called Entry Point. I think I'm the only one who's had 12 years of, say, tutorials with Adam, so it's rather special. The world in a grain of sand. I almost want to say, certainly if I were in my own place, I would say, let's stop there, and I'll give you 15 minutes to reflect on that. The world in a grain of sand. If you feel that's too difficult a concept, then you're going to struggle the whole way through what I say, because you may think the world can only be in maps or statistics or extended travel or extended study. In other words, how could the world be in a grain of sand? And I'm inviting you to consider that possibility. Nothing I say is original, so in case you didn't know, it's William Blake. It's the one. Eternity in an hourglass and the world in a grain of sand. I've added a word to the title of today's lecture. I'm not sure, Tom, whether the title was shared, but I passed it on at some stage to someone here. This is Overlooked No More, Pandita Ramabai, a pioneer in holistic, cross-cultural mission and ministry. Let's get that out of the way because they're words, and what I mean is they're complicated words, or they're long words anyway. So the title I added was holistic. And that's simply because when I was sharing about Ramabai at All Nations Christian College, I take it you have rugby and football matches against them, and they are very zealously, I don't know how it is. But for some reason, the word in mission that seemed to be most common presently was holistic. So I wondered whether that had reached Oxford or whether that Oxford had gone past holistic and you're into something else. I'm not sure why each of you is here today at OCMS, well, I mean here at all, nor why you're attending today. It might be it's a requirement of your whatever. But my assumption, I mean, I have lived, just so you know, I've lived, and I do live, so I understand something about the real world. Basically, what Tom didn't say is I'm a street boy. And just like people in the deep south of America, don't underestimate their drawl. Don't say because Stanley Howe has that Texan accent, he can't think. Yeah, Tom, I've said that to you now. That's good. You're working on it. That's not as good as Stanley's.
But I'm stupid.
But my that's okay, very good. You want to pause? Discuss that again. My assumption is that you all have more than a passing interest in Christian mission and ministry. So if you don't have more than a passing interest, then I'm sorry, this is going to be of no interest to you at all. But if that is so, you now have the inestimable privilege of being among the highly favoured few who are going to hear firsthand about one of the world's greatest pioneers in holistic cross-cultural mission and ministry. The world in a grain of sand. So, her name is Pandita Ramabai. To be precise, her name was Ramabai, but she was given the title Pandita. And she lived from 1858. That's not any time in history. It's when Queen Victoria became Empress of India, to 1922. So you spotted that's past the First World War, and she overlapped with, among others, Mahatma Gandhi. Her lifelong work, that's her mission and ministry, was on the great subcontinent of India. By the way, mission and ministry, I'm using mission to mean something like sharing the good news, the gospel, living the kingdom in all the earth, and ministry to be how do you, with those you're pastoring, those close to you, how do you serve them? There's a paradox at this point. If she is indeed so great a pioneer, how come she is so overlooked? There's a sort of assumption that greatness will come out, isn't there? Something like that. So we got to know Einstein, didn't we? And you could go on. How is it then that I come here to you, and it's possible that even students and faculty at OCMS do not know about her, or only have just a hint, a sort of mysterious mystique about her? How is it possible? That's such a profound riddle that when I first discovered her, I spent the next 5 years working on that riddle. Because as whatever a street boy, I'm interested in riddles. So I don't know whether you can see this, but it's heavy, deal in heavy things. So this was simply looking at the question, how has she been, to use Professor Kosombi's term, erased from both Indian history and also Western mission history? How? Or invisibilized? I don't know what words you use, but I mean, in other words, marginalized. Now, here there is some concern in the room. So there's a mystery guest. Is that people are looking? There's
It's a dutiful.
is this the one?
That is the man. So
Right, this is behold the man. Right, I knew I came just after the Viva, right? And I saw Tom's head from the back, and I could see his grin. So I knew it was good.
for those of you online, Kunle passed his final Viva Voce this morning, and is now with minor corrections, so he has a little bit more work to do, but not much. So so that's very good. Another.
Yeah, great, that's good. You're celebrating, and he's the only one wearing a tie. Well, that's, made the difference, but it certainly makes a difference today. So, how is it possible that someone so great can be so erased? I mean, when I say so erased. And that's here at OCMS. So look at the books. How many books refer to her? You see? And so I want you to realize that I've had the privilege of being alongside Ramabai. She obviously died in 1922, but being in one place in India, as is in Mukti, in one room in the archives, with all her correspondence, all her writings, the whole of her library, all her annotations, and in the place that she created, the church that she built, and the community she founded, trying to discover the world in a grain of sand. And when people say, how much do you know about India? I say, virtually nothing, but there is that one grain of sand. And you will hear about this too. So how is it that someone like Amy Carmichael, to talk about someone from across the water, that is someone from Northern Ireland, is known? And yet I've got a letter from Amy Carmichael saying of Ramabai, I'm unworthy to untie her sandals. How? And there's been some gatekeeping going on, hasn't there? Now, Tom spotted as someone almost a southerner, North Carolina, never quite sure where they live. He spotted there is a passion about this, what I'm saying, and there is. So you've got it. So let's just ask ourselves about holistic cross-cultural mission. Can we call a spade, cut to the chase? What is the model? If we had time, if we had quality time, I'd be all the time asking you to think individually or in groups, whoever you are, reflect on this question. What is the model you have today of holistic cross-cultural mission? Where was it derived and why are you committed to it? That's what I'd ask. I want to say that please avoid long words. The first day I attended Oxford University in order to follow in the footsteps of my mentor C.S. Lewis and taught by Christopher Tolkien. This is English language and literature, which is where I started. My fellow, this is the one who looked after me all the way through, A.O.J. Cocksharp, said, Mr. White, please avoid any long words and any long sentences. These are, in my view, an unsuccessful attempt to disguise sloppy thinking. And I tried to stay with that. So if I hear something like once upon a time, I'm there. But if I start hearing lots of long words, I turn off and wait till the person touches earth again. Now, surely the answer to the question, remember the first one? What is the model you have? As followers of Jesus, I make an assumption now you are. If not, why not? It is surely true that the model for holistic cross-cultural mission is God in Christ. Is not this the testimony of the scriptures, Old and New Testaments? Does not all Christian mission derive from him? Missio Dei. Is not Jesus the pioneer not only of our faith, but our mission? Here's some short words. As the Father sent me, so send I you. Now, I could get into Bosch and transformational mission and get into long words, but if you come back to it, is not that it? Now, just in case you're in any doubt, scriptures are cross-cultural. Part of the discipline in the community where I live is we use the Bible reading plan devised by Murray McCheyne, which was my grandfather passed on to Martin Lloyd-Jones, and he passed to someone called John Stott. Possibly you've heard of him. And John Stott, in his I Believe in Preaching, has 2 pages on that reading plan. And basically, it means you read something from 4 parts of the scriptures every day, and your mind gets stretched. So today, I was reading 2 Corinthians, Deuteronomy, and Isaiah 7, and the Psalm. Now, all I can say is if you do that every day, decade by decade, your mind gets stretched. And that's why I say the scriptures are cross-cultural, the Old Testament, because please get out of the way of thinking it's about a little tribe or tribes. It's remarkably cross-cultural and it's holistic. And the one perfect example, of course, of cross-cultural holistic mission is the life, work, and death of Jesus. And this, Luke records, began when he wrote his gospel. I've written to you, Theophilus, of all that Jesus began to do. That word began. Why began? Because from Pentecost onwards, the work of Jesus, that is the mission of God in Christ, now continues. It is his mission, it continues. It's astonishing that Luke can use that word began. Something when I was recently in India, I did was to look at the question, how far did any apostle or disciple understand God's mission in Christ up until Pentecost? Now, others may have done this, but I can find no evidence that they did. Things like Jesus said, how long have I been with you and still you don't understand? But after Pentecost, if you take one example, that's Philip, involved in Samaria with this extraordinary time of preaching and miracles and so on. And then he's called by the Spirit to go to the desert road. Like Jesus, he went because Jesus obeyed the Father's cross-cultural mission. cross-cultural mission. There we have it, haven't we? Are you with me? I'm just trying to get you back to source, and you'll see why in a moment. So, as followers of Jesus, what we are called to do is to continue what Jesus has been doing, with the Holy Spirit as our guide and comforter, so that we can follow doing all the things we've observed and he has taught and commanded us. If you've got that in mind, we move on to how do we follow Jesus? Are you following me? Because it's a simple story. If that is mission, and this is OCMS, so far so good, and you're followers of Jesus, then the next question is, how do you follow Jesus? I live among children, all of whom have suffered trauma and so on. The most recent one came from Kharkiv in Ukraine. He's 8 months old. He has his parents shell-shocked. I cannot but look people in the face and ask real questions, because the children ask me real questions. When the little boy cries, I think, what on earth is in his consciousness? With his mother, she's begun to share. Now, I'm going to use Pandita Ramabai as a way of describing what holistic, cross-cultural mission and ministry is, because of the way she followed Jesus. Her favorite book, I pass it on to you, is The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Please don't label her, don't say, come on, because she will not be labeled except as a follower of Jesus. She will be guilty to that. But don't please say high church, low church, or whatever else. That won't work. And this makes the point crystal clear. She fixed her eyes on Jesus and sought to do only and always what she learned from him. And when that sounds, it seems to be extraordinary, because so often I think of a time when I was lecturing, it doesn't matter where, and I said to people, what do you want to know about me? He didn't ask that. Tom said something about me. It was quite anodyne, really. He didn't ask about my convictions, speaking fines, anything like that. And time I've served to Majesty's pleasure. But yeah, one of the things I was asked on one occasion was, what are you? It's a good question for the student. And I said, you have to help me, because what am I is a bit difficult. He said, are you Baptist or Pentecostal? Pentecostal is with 2 eyes, by the way, as far as I can see. I said, really sorry, I can't help you. I'm a follower of Jesus. And he looked at me aghast, as if to say, that's not good enough. And I said, look, I'm going to be lecturing for a week in this place. I said, look, if you've got a problem, go to the principal. He asked me. But I just want you to know, sir, that I'm a follower of Jesus, but I'm not a good one. So please, I'm trying to point you to Jesus. That's what I'm trying to do. And I just want you to know that all Ramabai ever did was try to point people to Jesus. Now, this is now going to sound from now on like exaggeration, because you don't know me well enough to know that I was refined by those words of my Don, that I try to use the English language both with concision and precision. And so I'm telling you what I believe to be the truth. So help me God. If I put my hand on the Bible, I'm doing that now. This is Ramabai's Bible. And so help me God, I seek to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When did you last hear that here in this room, I wonder? Was it in your Bible? Did you say that, sir? I don't know. Interesting question. But trust me, Ramabai was not your ordinary or average follower of Jesus like me. She learned how to seek and follow the truth, and you hold on to that, through the strictest Bhakti Hindu discipline. Now here in the UK, we play at discipline. That's the real thing. That's the real thing. And when she became a follower of Jesus, she never had to unlearn one iota of this spiritual, intellectual, and physical rigor. Please hear that. So her training as a Bhakti Hindu Brahmin meant that she learned discipline. It's difficult to know how to put it, but you're going to have a chance to come back. What is more, she suffered more than most human beings could try to imagine. Don't try to imagine it, but she did. Sometimes people have said to me, the Lord loves whom, he chastens those he loves. And I want to say, look, please just leave that for another time. What happened to Ramabai? Yes, there we are. So the best analogy would be an individual who, as a result of the Holocaust, lost every member of their family, their home, their belongings, their community. This is not an exaggeration. Please, Ramabai lost them all. At her birth, she was homeless because her father had given all his money to the poor. Her brilliant father had given all his money as a Hindu to the poor. And for the next 19 years of her life, she was homeless. Foxes have sex, and the birds of the air have their nests, but Ramabai, like the one she followed, had nowhere to lay her head. And what you're going to find is this is uncanny. Are you finding there's what I'm trying to say is, this is getting very near to following Jesus. She witnessed, you see, it wasn't just she heard that someone had died in the Holocaust in whatever, she witnessed the death of her father, her mother, her sister, her brother, her husband, before she died. She didn't witness that because she was too ill. For 20 years, she wandered, 19 to 20 years, penniless, or to be precise, Anna-less, through India, from its humid coastal Konkan plains to the Himalayan foothills. She had no home. She never spent a day at school. What I want to say is, so her education was not interrupted. She observed this, that's not said in jest. If you're bright enough, then school is a complete and utter waste of time. She observed the strictest ascetic discipline. She fasted, whatever, just the whole thing. In the process of walking through India, you'll discover something important. When she was in northeast India, near Kolkata, she was handed a copy of Luke's Gospel in Bengali. Native, difficult to know what a native tongue was, but we could call it Marathi. From that moment on, by the way, Luke's Gospel, you just notice referred to all that Jesus began to do. Please make the links, because this is a street boy trying to actually to be pretty precise. Street boys survive on precision. And she then began to study the life and work of Jesus until she became a follower. And then she followed. And she served him faithfully to the end. If we have time, I will tell you about her last hours, because I didn't mean till near the end, I meant till the end. Now, I'm going to give you a snapshot of Ramabai. At All Nations, we had the problem. I asked people what they'd like to do, to discuss, and they all said, can you tell us a story around it? That's all we did, was have a story. So I'm going to give you a snapshot. And once again, I invite your instinctive response. I understand this, that this is exaggerated, but it's a cross that scholars of Ramabai have to bear. That is a little pun, because the person I'm going to mention now is Professor Mira Kasombi, a secular Hindu, till she died, the authority on Ramabai. So the mantle has fallen heavily on me now. Was the one who has studied Ramabai most systematically and fully. She told me on one occasion that there would come a time when I simply could not believe what I was finding out about Ramabai. It cannot be true. And I'm so grateful she did. Because when the time came that I couldn't believe what I was reading, the words of Mira Kasombi, one of the great sociologists of India, and daughter of the great Dr. Kasombi, the historian, the words stayed with me. Stay with it, please. You can't believe this, but it's true. So a snapshot. She was light-skinned, 5 feet high. That's the height of the middle of a badminton net. It's 5 feet 1 inches at the side and 5 feet in the middle. And she was born with one of the greatest brains and one of the widest ocean hearts known in human history. Some of my time has been spent at Princeton in the presence of the work of Professor Loder, who lived nearby Einstein. And so I had the privilege of observing very fine brains. And I just want to say to you that having observed Ramabai, she is completely there. So there's no difficulty at all. Her brain, she inherited her father's brilliance. We can't go into that at the moment, but you need to know that. She was trained by her father and mother, so important that, to think precisely. With your thesis, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what about the gender factor? So Tom talked about the lay and clerical. I want to know about gender. Not now, but I want to know about it. So she was trained by her father and mother to think precisely, to observe meticulously, to study ceaselessly, and to seek only, I've said this already, truth. Remember that, will you? Truth. If you say, what was she? Pentecostal. Come on, can we get the labels out of the way? And you might wonder how she knew anything, given she didn't go to school. This is the point. To wander 7,000 miles barefoot around India, under the stars, learning languages at roughly 2 weeks per language. Roughly. Hebrew and Greek, she learned together in 2 weeks. Now, again, you say, come on, this is it, you see. Miracle, somebody said, Keith, you can't believe this, but there it is. How did she pay for that? She taught her teacher Sanskrit as she was learning. So if you say, did she sleep? I could never find any evidence she did. So she wandered around India and it was no interruption because she was just wanting to know. There's an insect, she's with the insects, there are the galaxies. There's nothing coming between her and what she's interested in. Her library, for what it's worth, is about everything. There's no subject. Okay. So the universe was her field of study, from the tiniest particle in insects to the structure and geology of the earth. The world in a grain of sand. By the way, that's geology for you. And because she had no notebooks, she kept everything in her mind. Now, to this day, I still can't believe what she had in her mind, but there we are, so there it is. But if you're never trained to start putting things into books or relying on books, your brain is wired, is it not? Your brain is wired at birth for infinity. I believe that. There is no logical reason why the networks cannot connect. It's just that what we do is we get lazy and we get limited. But what's happened to her is there's nothing interrupting the spread of the neural networks. So she wandered through India, she learned the languages, she learned Sanskrit, though it was forbidden to Indian women, and take geography. She knew the topography and the geology of India. Nothing like it going on foot. Take astronomy. She knew the planets and nothing like it under the stars. Take insects. She observed insects, flora, fauna in minute detail. Take psychology. She understood human hearts and behavior. That's where the street boy in me comes out. You can read people a mile away. Take sociology. She understood how human groups function. She watched from households to nations and civilizations. Cross-cultural, she watched the British. She watched people in Gujarat. I'm not talking ever about Indians because that's a fascinating concept. People in Gujarat, you see, people in Bengal, people in Chennai, whatever it may be. Take history. She studied it from people groups in India to civilizations across the world. She did one of the best studies of witch hunting in Europe. And people are astonished when you find that many of the leading theologians who we honor were in favor of drowning or burning witches. She studied the American treatment of the indigenous peoples who were called, would you believe it, Red Indians. That's fascinating, isn't it? Red Indians. And she wrote one of the major studies of the USA, still not known, still not read. In my book, there are 50 recommendations for PhDs. I'm wanting you to sign up before you go today. And if you can't do it yourself, then do it seriously. What I've done is to give the footnotes, not only saying this is the title of the thesis, but this is where you will find it. I think it's a gift. The thing for my PhD, for a PhD, you've got to find the question. What's the question? If you've got that, you're away. What I mean is, if it's a reasonable question, it's been refined. Your question was a good one, I thought, and from what I heard. Tom's a fan. So there we go. She wrote that study. She knew the sacred text of Hinduism by heart. Of course, she had to, didn't she? Because she used to it anyway. It's by heart. She knew it in her mind. So when she came to the UK, which she did, one of her friends lived just a stone's throw from here, Professor Max Muller, who edited the 50-volume collection of sacred texts of the East, and he understood he was bright enough to know she was his equal or superior. Never been to school, no degree, but and I can never tell it. She wouldn't be interested in this praise. It didn't water off a duck's back. I'm trying to tell you, I'm giving you a snapshot. She soon engaged in deep theological discussion in the UK, cutting edge stuff with Professor Westcott and Dr. Charles Gore, editor of the book Lux Mundi. Now, I'm not saying you know them, but if you did know Anglican theology in 19th century Britain, then these are the ones who are cutting the ice. And in the book, in her letters, I put side by side letters between her and Charles Gore. And I said to the reader, now decide on the debate. Who do you think's actually, who's got it? I'm not going to say to you, but I don't think Charles Gore comes out of it very well. I didn't say that. Now, I'm not exaggerating. And just so you know, because I said I borrow everything, the half has never been told. Kind of. So now I come on to her contribution to holistic Christian mission and ministry. So how did this, that is who she was, coalesce or feed into her life and mission in the service of her Lord and Saviour, the one she called Guru, Jesus Christ? So follower, Guru. So she is a devotee of her Guru, Jesus. This is not only a lifetime relationship, but an eternal one. So first, this is, I believe, for transformation, if you like this, I'm very happy to pass it on to you. So that I'm trying now to go right back to what is the heart of holistic cross-cultural mission. So first, she set about understanding the mission field. Good starting point. The Glovers said in their books, the Glovers, the Baptists from Bristol, before you go and open your mouth in India to say anything, ask what God has already revealed to himself before you arrive. She studied the mission field. Her mission field was India. Oh, she'd walk around it. Whereas Gandhi had to do a public relations trip by train to get to know India, because he'd come obviously from South Africa. She knew it from the inside, particularly, but not exclusively, it's women. A mission field, women with a focus on child widows. By the way, that's women of all ages. She studied the mission field by living among its people. 30 years of Jesus in Nazareth for 3 years of ministry. And somehow we think that 3 years of teaching study for 30 years or something. She lived amongst, she listened to their stories. Every bit of this is so important. Listen, hear me. She heard them in context. This is active listening, with careful analysis and observation. By the way, one of her legacies, one of the PhDs that is here, I offer to you, is analysing the life stories of Indian women that she recorded. Hasn't been done. My life is too short. It's just been 25 years getting to work, and now there are 50 PhDs that need. She developed an understanding of the underlying factors, of what I call the power relations between historical, religious, economic, social, that confined and consigned millions of such women to what was in effect a form of slavery. So I put it that basically she analyzes sin and how sin affects human relations in terms of slavery. So all sin involves some form of slavery. You need to think about that. That's where, once you get into that, slavery is not just black and white. Slavery is ubiquitous and many splendid. So that's the first thing. Second, she sought a practical, relevant, biblical working model for change. How's that? That's what they teach you in OCMS, but now we've studied the mission field. Now we need a working model. What's the aim? The aim was to change society so that it was more like the kingdom of God. You see how we're getting back to base, and now we're finding, I think we're finding ourselves at home. The way I prepare myself today, I reread one of my favorite books, John B. Taylor's The Go-Between God, just on mission. It's chapter 7 I was reading. And I just thought, that's right, this is right. He's just simply saying, this is it. It is. How can it be anything other than we pray the prayer, your kingdom come, and now we carry on what Jesus is doing so that where class, status, gender, ethnicity play no part in defining the identity or the script of individuals. They are free. Mukti or Azadi. That's Pandita Ramabai most recent book, both words of freedom. She read widely to understand how patriarchy and colonialism conspired with traditional patterns of inequality. That's, in other words, not just British rule or whatever else it is coming mobile, but go and see what's in Hinduism. And if you're searching truth, by the way, you don't just go at someone there and you go for enemies, you go for truth. You go for truth behind you. And so she studied that. Third, she trained in the model. All right, so have you got me? Now, one is study the mission field. Two is to find a working model, which is working biblically. Three, you train, because some people slip on that, don't they? And then she trained others before setting up a single working model. If you ask, how did Jesus do that? He called 12 and then established a single working model. She called it Sharda Sadan and set it up in Mumbai. It was a radical, pioneering space. That's the only way, a place. The difficulty otherwise is I need labels, and the labels have too much baggage. It was a home school. Difficult even in Britain, because that can sound, oh, do you mean a public school? Boris Johnson, hold it, let's get rid of that baggage. We're talking about something where widows can be, and they can learn with complete freedom. In time, she established a place called Mukti, which was a residential community. It still exists. And dear brother David, we're connected, aren't we? We're related, in fact, through Mukti by blood, if you see what I mean, because you have a daughter, and I'm a son of a brother of Mukti. It was a community of 2,000 people, mainly outcasts, widows, the homeless, diseased, and hungry, all the people Jesus chose to be with. Please, I haven't left Jesus at any point here. You said that with Jesus, studying the mission field, working in model of change and so on. The whole desert, the temptation experiences, how are you going to do this, bread and so on, throw yourself down, all this. She established this community. It was a refuge full of activity, training and hope, seeking to support individuals and empower them to be agents of change in India. to continue the work that Jesus had done. The name Mukti means freedom, schools, a hospital, and something like 60 or more activities, skills, workshops, and factories, providing, for example, part of the uniform for the Indian railway workers. And you might say, oh, why is that seen? Well, and quite a lot of them. She set up an interdenominational church. You'd already guessed it had to be interdenominational. She kept on asking, show me in the Bible where we find denominations, where Jesus is advocating them or showing. Well, that's what she said. She said it to anyone. And if people could have showed her, she would have followed. They weren't able. She kept on finding, by this will all people know in India that you're my son. You love one, but you don't. You come as Lutherans or Catholics and whatever, can't you see? That's what she was, can't you see what you're doing? And so she set up an interdenominational with women among its leaders. This is the 19th century, friends. There were hundreds of baptisms in the local river, which is Bhimar. She was baptized there. Ramabai introduced indigenous worship, instruments, songs, and translations of the Psalms. The church community drew people from different continents to serve alongside Ramabai. It was cross-cultural, with an Indian woman as its servant. I didn't say servant, no. She came not to be served, but to serve. In 1905, there were remarkable events at Mukti. The way people have to talk about them is revival. I said in the chapter on revival that you might find it helpful just to suspend that and just listen to the events and then decide how you best describe them. One of the PhDs I recommend is a study of Ramabai's writings of the revival, because I believe it provides the fullest and most insightful natural record of any revival on earth. And yet people won't do it. They still study Azusa Street. Come on. During this moving of God's Spirit, Ramabai was not called to speak in tongues, which was a problem for a visiting American. I have said to them, including Bill Pravett, which is recorded, isn't it? I delete. Said, what would it look like Ramabai to be gifted in speaking in tongues? It looked like. She didn't speak in tongues, an unknown language, but her calling by God's Spirit was to translate the whole Bible from Hebrew and Greek into her own people's common language. Now, still today, the Brahmins, including Professor Kazombi, don't understand this because they say there are perfectly good words that she doesn't use, including John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Putra, perfectly good Marathi word, but she wouldn't use it. Amira Kazombi, and I'm talking about this a lot. Why on earth is this brilliant? She's got a feel for language. Oh, wow. Why does she use these strange words? Well, the answer is because she could spot a word coming with Hindu baggage, which would actually create the wrong meaning. So she translated it. This is Brahmin of the Brahmins. And she spent all the last years of her life translating into the ordinary street language. It so happened, of course, that I had spent 30 years of my life working on this version of the Bible for my own street boy companions and girls. I understood a little bit about what she was doing. The aim of this version was to equip those at Mukti, Bible women, to live as followers of Jesus and to be salt and light in their communities, sharing the gospel by life and by word. And for every member of the community of Mukti to come to know Jesus so that they could experience God's love and forgiveness in and through him, and then serve him, follow him faithfully, and serve him in whatever role he called them to occupy in their life. The Bible was translated using a comprehensive model and lexicon which Ramabai offered to translators worldwide. The scandal is that not one translator has yet taken it up. It is 100 years later. I was with someone, a senior person from the Bible Society yesterday, and still they have not even read a model of Bible translation for the world. Now, I'm speaking with a passion because I believe God gave Ramabai to the world. And the world has said, no, thank you. In fact, the world didn't even know, because an Indian woman of 5 feet high, what said the Bible Society? We've got a committee of scholars, and she's one woman. Fascinating. Pilate saying, don't you know I've got I don't know that, said Jesus. Not all. What a number. And one of my great heroes, Spurgeons, said one word of truth outweighs a world of lies. That's his Nobel Prize speech. Alexander Spurgeons. One word of truth outweighs the words of many committees. We prefer committees. If this, my friends, I call you my friends, you won't be at this stage of raving enemies, I don't know, but if this is not holistic cross-cultural mission and ministry, then what is? It's so informed and it's so radical that it's still way ahead of the curve. I remember speaking to Miracle Zombie and saying, look, in terms of Ramabai's feminism, their agenda, where are we 70 years after Indian independence? Because that's very cool. Miracle Zombie said, she's way ahead of the curve. Ramabai is so far ahead, and still, Oxford Centre for Mission Study, it just hasn't caught up with this. Hasn't caught up with it. I talked about Ramabai 10 years ago, I wrote an article in translation, not a single response. It's typical. I now realise, I see how it was. Just with my book, BBC, Washington Post, New York Times, Times Every Supplement, you name it, blank. It's a non-event, a non-person. What I'm coming to you saying now, this is it, because we're nearly there. We're in the last 5 minutes. So someone in psychotherapy, this is when the action is. This is when all will be revealed. So you've had the sugar, now it's the pill. I've come to OCMS today with a mission. I plead with you, my friends, I plead with you as individuals and OCMS as an institution. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. I said that once at a conference in NIrV, and someone who actually studied here heard it. Constantiano.
Cornelio.
Okay, who's now died, as you know. And he showed me one day his president's in the seminary. He said, Keith, when you said that, I knew I had to change my president's office. He listened. It was very, very moving. You cannot carry on the same way. Now you're busy. Some of you, well, come on, now can you change? But it's 100 years since Ramabai died. Very few know of her unparalleled life and work. The reason, hearing about her, and one of the things, I'm not dreading it because I prepare, street boys prepare. When I face Ramabai in the next life, she's going to come to me and she's going to say, how on earth did you choose that title when you knew that I didn't want my name on any book? Then I will look her in the eye. If I prepare this, right, I will come down to her level. What I mean is physically, in every other way, I'm looking up to her. I always talk about him as the Himalaya, her as Himalayas, and I'm the molehill. Understand that? And I would say, please listen to me. I believe that through hearing your voice, people in India would hear the voice of your Saviour. That's the reason. If I simply talked, and I have been in India, I talked about Jesus, then I'm in categories. White, I'm white, my name is White. Why not? Been to Oxford. I mean, I've almost lost it before I start. All street cred is gone. They don't recognise me as a street kid. They do in India once I play cricket. They say, where did you learn to play like this? I say, well, on the streets. And that's what I do when I'm in India, by the way, seriously, play cricket. It's 100 years since she died. And having researched her for 25 years, this is now the most extensive biography and study of Ramabai. It's not to say it's much more that needs to be done. That's why there are 50 suggested topics for study. But they're all integral to Christian ministry and mission. Well, one is her Bible, lexicon, which she offers to the world. I find it hard to know how people can say, well, sorry, Keith, that doesn't have anything to do with us. Nice hearing you talk for an hour, now we'll go away and get on with life. Today, if we will hear his voice, OCNS, can we not do something together on this? There's a pervasive prejudice that is at work, and I'm now seeing it. I'm finding the reaction to what I'm saying. I'm learning what it is to be an Indian woman, widow. It's not pleasant. It's not that Ramabai, or I, for that matter, want to achieve celebrity status. I didn't want my name to be on the book, but people said it's a little bit tricky. Anon. People want to know who you are. But I didn't, but it's of no significance at all. So the question, Tom, David, sorry is not here. I do wish Paul had been here, but it's recorded. And the question is, what's holding us back? What's holding us back? If it's not you, can it not be someone you know? I'll come alongside. So I wasn't going to do this, but let me end what I'm going to say, and then Tom, is that right? Open to people. That's right, whatever you do. One of the questions, if I were you, I want to know is how come I got to know Ramabai? You might be interested in this, but how come I got to know her, and how come there's passion? Now, the passion, can be explained in other ways, but at a place called Herne Bay Court, 1957, in the games room, the Lord spoke to me and said, I have something to do in India. But that was it. And for 40 years, I tried to find out what it was. I studied the mission field. I asked people. I was here at Oxford after that. I was the International Mission Secretary of the Christian Union. One of the things I did, apart from organise punk parties and various other things, was to ask people from India, help me. And anyway, but whatever was suggested, one was become professor of English at Coombe University. You'll be a perfect fit. You've got J.R.R. Tolkien, Christopher Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and you play cricket. This is before IPL, by the way. But I mean, it's serious stuff, because I do play cricket seriously. But for whatever reason, nothing was right. People say, will you edit a magazine? Will you write this? Will you do this? But that was not, the Lord hadn't told me. And then in 1997, I set foot on India for the first time. And everything went wrong. I was to go and give some papers somewhere, and I had no mobile phone. I still don't have a mobile phone. I had a fountain pen, and I had a street boy's awareness of. I was in Mumbai, and I was trying to get to Pune, but the only way of getting there was Freddie Hamilton. Freddie Hamilton will meet you when you get off the plane. He works for Gulf Air, and he will take you. Freddie Hamilton didn't appear. And for 48 hours, I became penniless in Mumbai. with no plan. All I had was a return ticket. So I simply said to Goldfair, they said, we don't know where he is. He's an employee. We don't know where he is. He's disappeared. That's all, very well. And then I decided best thing would be to go back home because what else could I do? So I would have spent 72 hours in India after 40 years waiting. And that was that. And then I lost it. And for some reason, I decided from where I was, I would walk south to try and find the gateway of India. It was not very sensible because I was actually 28 miles north of the gateway. But it was midday. And so I was a mad Englishman with also mad dogs. And I lost it. I came, there was an arch with something in Marathi above it, and there was a guard with a 303 rifle. And I said, take me to your principal. And I said that. And he said, no. And I said, you're not listening to me. And it's just completely bizarre. I lost it. I didn't know what to say, really. But anyway, he got on his brick phone, because they were bricks at that stage. Eventually, he showed me down with his 303 rifle to a colonial-looking building, distinguished woman standing on the steps. She said, welcome to the Women's University of Mumbai. Now I understand why he was, because it wasn't then, I could say, I identify as a woman or a in those days, you were male or female, it was pretty ancient. And anyway, so she welcomed me. She said, I'm sorry, the president is the principal, but I'm the vice principal. Do come in. And at this point, I want an exit strategy. I don't want to be in the Women's University. It's just possible Freddie Hamilton would turn up at the ramshackle hotel called something that wasn't remotely like either. Anyway, she then took me to some of them. They were very kind, the faculty, and started talking. And they said, where are you supposed, what are you supposed to, and I said, I'm a sociologist, and whatever else. Anyway, where are you supposed to be lecturing? And I said, well, I'm sorry about this. Could I go? They said, no, but just tell us this. So I said, well, I'm supposed to be going to a place called Mukti. You would have heard of it. Said, we know who you've come to see. And at this point, I've lost it. I'm thinking, I've got a temperature. I haven't come to see anyone. But they took me down some passages, came to a door. I don't know what was the other side of the door, but they were in awe. Knocked on the door, there was a growl. They opened it, and they're sitting just where you are. Sorry, but that's the distance from the door. Was a distinguished looking Brahmin. I could tell that on the street well enough to recognize Brahmin. And she said, I'm busy. Now, she said it with a Brahmin tone, which it's not, there are words in the East End of London, swear words, which are a similar way. They're trying to say, go. And I went straight across to him and said, pleased to meet you, I'm Keith. He said, I'm busy. I said, I'm Keith. And that turned out to be Professor Kasombi, the leading authority on a person I'd never heard of, called Ramabai. She said, seeing you've interrupted me, I said, I haven't. He said, well, you do anyway. So this is where we're beginning to get to know each other quite fast. I want to get out of here, and the more anyway. Well, what on earth are you doing? I said, well, I'm sorry, I want to get out of this place. I'm trying to get to a place called Mukti. And she said, oh, do you know what I've got in my hands? And I said, well, I don't know. She said, well, do you know anything to do with Oxford University? I said, oh, okay. That's the matter. I went there. She said, well, I'm writing a book for OUP on Ramabai, but the place where you're going won't give me the cover photograph. Now I can use you. So this point we're doing business, we get Chai in and all the rest of it. And so she then gives me all her writings on Ramabai and her PhD thesis, which was a sociological study of Mumbai and Pune, which is fascinating. She did for the University of Stockholm. In my big rucksack, she puts them all in there as a way of trying to make sure that I, as someone British whom she couldn't trust, she told me that straight away, didn't trust the British. So I would come back with a photograph. This seemed to be a fair deal. Okay. So I then got my rucksack on. She says goodbye. And I go back to the hotel, and there is someone called Freddie Hamilton who says, where have you been? And I said, Freddie, look, do not ask me, Freddie, where have you been? And he said, my mummy has had gangrene in her big toe.
Mm.
And I put it to you, but I'm telling you the story. This is how I got involved. And had his mummy not had gangrene, he was trying to prevent her foot being amputated. Had that not happened, I might still be trying to find out what God wanted me to do. On the way to Pune, I got these books out. I read what Miracle Zombie said about Ramabai, who I was going to the place she'd established. And when I sat down in my little room with my pen, which I still use, and my diary, I've still got the diary notes. This is this year's diary, but this is 1997. I wrote simply, and the hairs on my head stood on end. It's only time. I wrote, now I know. For everything that had happened in Ramabai's life had happened in mine. She travelled the whole of America. I travelled the whole of America on a Greyhound bus. She'd done a Bible for her people. I'd done a Bible. She was born in a residential community. I was born, the whole thing. She was a linguist with connections with Oxford and Professor. There we are. And I suddenly realised that for 40 years, the Lord had been preparing me for this single task. When Churchill, who happened to be my MP, I met him when I was 9 in 1955, Winston Churchill, in case you're confusing with anyone. When he became Prime Minister, at the point where German forces were breaking through, it looked as though Buckingham Palace would become the headquarters of the Reich in the UK. He said, I felt as though the whole of destiny, the hand of destiny was upon me, and all my life was preparations for this. Now, I knew that. My father had helped me to learn all Winston Churchill's speeches. I was learned and so on. And I felt exactly the same, that at that moment I was at Mukti, and I still got the diary entry, and I wrote the thesis, which is the first one is this abstract, which is how could this woman be someone I never heard of? And that was the question. So that's the answer to the question you may not have asked, but if I've been where you are, it's where did the passion come from? It's 40 years gestating. So that was my 30 years in Nazareth. And then here we are. And now the question is, how do others continue the work of Jesus that Rabbi has helped us?
Or it's just for people to give any kind of responses or reflections to what Keith has said, maybe in terms of your own action and what brought you to this point, and also those strange occurrences that kind of turn things one way or another that you never expected to happen that got you here. And where does that lead to? So
They are strange. I mean, I read voraciously, not having a mobile phone, I read. So Salman Rushdie did my children's same day, actually. But so the gangrene of the big toe sounds just like an episode out of a Rushdie novel. You see what I mean? That's what I felt. I felt, oh,
So I have a question. You started your thank you so much for all you've
well,
done.
thank you for sitting there all the time.
No, one of my main research participants grew up in Mukti, so I'm very familiar with Pandita Ramabai.
Grew up in Mukti.
Yes. Yeah, she grew up in Gambia.
Okay, well, I'm triangulating now.
So anyway, but you started your presentation off with the question, why has Pandita Ramabai been ignored?
Yeah.
So what is your answer?
Right, okay.
Never answered your question.
No, but this is why all the time I was trying to move on. Because in all nations, when I tried this, we just got people just wanted more of a story. And we never got to her mission. I mean, so I tried to do it another way. Now that's the answer.
What's it? Give me the
I thought
Yeah,
you wouldn't speak to asking me to summarize. Okay.
that's it's sort of
Okay.
abstract.
But
Which is
so this was how she marked, by the way, both in India, I said that, and also in mission history in the West.
Yes.
I wouldn't expect sort of political, or I wouldn't expect her to figure. You see what I mean in that, but in mission history, yeah.
Mm.
Now, this seems to me a complete paradox. So, I mean, it's just that either I'm right, it's just like C.S. Lewis and Jesus. They don't say he was sort of moderately wrong. He's either mad or bad, or he's who he said he was.
Right.
The options are limited.
Okay.
Now, either what I'm saying is true, and by the way, NIrV Zombie, if she were here, she would have put it differently, and we would have had a humdinger of a disagreement about anyway things, because we're both scholars, and I respect her so much, and NIrV Zombie in the book. I've got a list of all things she wrote. I've continued her work. So she actually did an analysis of the erasure, that's her word, in India. And what I did was to complement it, as we were both sociologists, trained sociology, but so that's when, so I was looking at the West. Now there are actually 7 reasons I give, but I'll just select a couple. I think one big paradox is if someone is truly great and not seeking celebrity, then it's going to be very difficult actually to capture or describe it. So that's something. I can hold on to that for a moment, because you must put a label. Now there are something like 20 labels you could give if you had a dictionary or a biography, and how do you label her? There are about 20 you would give her. Well, and Bible translator, the only woman. And to print it, by the way, she arranged the printing. But it's going, Carey, we all know Carey. Well, hold it, I know Carey, it's brought up a Baptist, funnily enough. I didn't do much good, did it? But anyway, what I mean is it didn't make me a Baptist. That's something that happened when I came here, by the way. People followed me and said, you're a Baptist, aren't you? Well, hold it. They said, we went to Baptist church. I said, that's a logical non sequitur. Just to say, somewhere, anyway, but that was another discussion. But so if you take a control sample, take Mother Teresa, who of course is not Indian, Albanian. But it was Malcolm Muggeridge who iconicized her, and the Catholic Church who said she's one of us. Well, who's going to say, as NIrV Zombie said, you've got to iconicize Ramabai. I said, hold it, I'm not Malcolm Muggeridge. I didn't know Malcolm Muggeridge. He lectured at my college, and I'm going to be preached. I'm going to be preaching in 2 weeks' time on Bible translation on the college. It's translating the good news with love. Is the title. So, translating the good news with love. So, Mother Teresa, that's another reason. She's got people rooting for her. She's got a pope. She's been beatified. Even me. So Ramabai is seeking truth. I mean, the Hindus, she's, as far as the story of Baltilaka, she betrayed her heritage. She's betrayed India. Right, so NIrV Zombie can see it. NIrV Zombie says it's a smokescreen. What they couldn't stand was her feminism. That's NIrV Zombie's view. She was critiquing patriarchy. I'm talking, this is serious stuff, I mean, not messing around. So, but so Ramabai hasn't got that. And the other thing is it's sheer racial prejudice. So in mission, Western mission, I mean, how can we have this? But it's the Amy Carmichael thing, isn't it? Yeah, she'd be, well, fine, that's wonderful. Oh, wow, you've done this, you've written all these books. They're good books and what she did. But the whole time, it fits, it comes from the West. It's La Tourette expansion and whatever from the West, and so it's coming the wrong way. So we're just not geared up to that, are we? And so I think it's something like that. But I think the one other thing which I didn't put in here, but I will risk it, which is that as a sociologist who has knocked around, I'm talking to you straight, and you've probably gathered that I can read, I'm a street fighter. I don't get mugged because I'm very happy with anyone. I don't mind being with gangs or whatever. And just that's the way I've grown up in a community of 13 people. And you can make choices. Now, I made the choice to serve the children in the family where I live. My wife is there today,
Mhm.
and I should really be there because there are people providing for a special event. And so to all the positions I was invited, I said no, because my commitment is to these children. And that leads to invisibility.
Right.
And so a phrase I love is true community is with Christ on the margin. And that we're deep, right? So I can recognize celebrity. I can see how it's done. Someone I've studied in detail is George Muller, because in some ways he lived alongside. But like Thomas Coram, Muller was able to connect with those who were influenced. Ramabai, to the best of our knowledge, with Mano, destroyed all her celebrity correspondence before she died. Among her friends were Gladstone, Queen Victoria. We go around the world, and all of that is deliberately erased. She's erased that. And so we now get it's almost identical to Jesus, isn't it? And what I'm pleading is because we love Jesus, he didn't write a book. He was a nobody. He had nothing. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows. And a final thing, if I could, because I think this I think is the way to Ramabai. In other words, we're getting now to how she is. In Mukti, 2,000 people asked me, did she know their names? I said, look, come on, don't you? She knew their names. The important thing, she knew their stories. Not just she'd learned them. Where were you born? She's with me. She knows the place. She knows the stories she tells. This PhD on the stories is wonderful. There's going to be a beautiful PhD. Just waiting for the name of the person who's going to do it. But something in Mukti, then 3 insights into her role. So, by the way, when I went, there was one person alive who knew her. He'd been alive, and I met him. So I spoke with an eyewitness. That was one of God's gifts. I came just in time. He died within months. So I spoke with an eyewitness, and he said this. He said that when in chapel at Mukti, there would be Ramabai would sit on the stage, and she would run a kindergarten for the babies. That's what she did. I said, well, what did she say? She didn't say anything. And she said they always were happy playing. At night time, she nursed the sick in her room. And then for her birthday, she had a big party. And in the front line, you know the front line? Table all the way down. And there were her special friends. That's those with disability, the blind. And everyone else served them for her birthday. Now I'm speaking with emotion because this is so like Jesus. There's a meal, and who's there? And it's not done for, I have to say this because it's not known. She's not doing it. Oh wow, let's give her an MBE or something like that. You see what I mean? She's doing it because she loves them, and this is how the kingdom is. Yeah. So I've given you an answer. So all these reasons they show how great she was because she eschewed all this. She set her face to serve.
We're going to go with Marina, then with David, and then
I'll be brief.
Yeah, I just wanted.
But that summarized that. That saved you a bit of time.
Yeah, not to disregard all your explanation as to why she's not so well known. I was thinking about, is it also not just because she doesn't want to be known, but also because she was not owned by any mission societies or any denominations? Because
when I mentioned,
the narrative we get mainly begin with missionaries who talk about their mission field and go on.
but she wasn't part of OCMS. No, seriously. Or Oxford University. She hasn't got any advocate. Be a street boy called Keith White. Pathetic.
There were other Brahmin converts.
Nehemiah Gorey.
Narayan
No,
I'm just wondering what sort of a role their stories would have played if they her conversion to Christianity, but more importantly, in her development as a theologian of Hinduism as well. So, I mean, she had a view of Hinduism or Brahminism.
This is your specialism, isn't it? Interfaith.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a specialist too in that.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, it gets, I don't want to put Nehemiah Gore in it, might not be known to you or Ryan Tillek, as different as chalk and cheese. But it was, she said, it's here. By the way, this is the copy of the book produced for the centenary, so so I had the privilege of kneeling when her body was laid 100 years to the day.
Wow.
In what we simply said, we have nativity plays in England. We have 3 wise men from the East bearing precious gifts. And it's a poor deal, because you've got one unwise person from the West bringing a book. But I'm here kneeling where Ramabai's body was laid 100 years ago and 4 hours ago. So that's the way it was. So Narayan Tilak, he said, well, she valued as just a poet and his understanding of culture, his love of culture, his wonderful, great poem, Epic on Christ. And she wanted to involve him, she did in the translation of this, but got quite quickly into the, that this was the common people. And he understood, I mean, anyway, they are. But Nehemiah Gore wrote this extraordinary long book. He started as a fact for her. It was proofs for the divinity of Christ, that's what it was. And it's astonishingly difficult scholastic text. And once you get Brahmin Hindus writing Christian theology, you have to raise your game. This is serious stuff. Scholastic isn't in it. Glory, this is Christology. Oh, wow. And she says is something like his sweet, gentle tones won me for Christ. I thought, wow, where did she find sweet, gentle tones in that? And so the answer is so she was familiar with that. We got the person.
Al, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Could I say, but they were male? Can you hold on that? No, it's been.
Yeah, that's.
But
Thank you so much, Dr. White. I was, before you arrived today, I was explaining that I had come straight from the airport to not miss this lecture. And I'm so glad I did, because I've flown in from Chile. And there you'll be most encouraged to know that Ramabai is very well known. And she's well known not among academics, but among the simple Pentecostal people. You must know of this extraordinary occurrence that she, one of the Minnie Abrahams had been at Bible college with Willis Hoover's wife, and they received that tract from what was going on in the 1905 revival, as you well say, pre-Azusa. And it was indeed a Pentecostal revival. The tract speaks of the children and others speaking in tongues and all kinds of but not making a big issue of just tongues, but of every Pentecostal manifestation. So every Pentecostal in Chile knows about Ramabai, Pandita Ramabai, because she is seen as a revivalist, and she may not be ever sought notoriety among academic circles, but the Holy Spirit made sure that among the simpler people of the earth that have been seeking God, she is well known, certainly among Chilean Pentecostals. And I just wonder how.
I used to say it's page 563 where I describe what you're saying.
Lovely.
563. It's about the effect in Chile. Here.
Right. And
wonderful to have confirmation.
Well, my question to you is, did similar things occur? I mean, she is iconized in Chile. I mean, she is seen as a major figure. So that hopefully encourages you. But did this occur anywhere else? Did that revival affect so profoundly a nation as it did Chile?
Well, because I haven't been to Chile, I can't make a comparison, but I'm encouraged. few be encouraged if people are following Jesus in Chile.
Yeah.
That thing we encourage. So that was all that mattered. It has, as far to the best of my knowledge, that Chile is an exception.
Okay.
Somehow there was the connection through particular people. I give the footnotes and references here to who they were.
Yeah.
In a way that didn't happen with other parts. So in North America, it was a lost cause because it has to be Azusa Street and it has to be homegrown. It can't come from somewhere else. I mean, and so that's the way it is. I'm sorry for that, but I'm speaking as a sociologist. But it
No, you'll be
can't accept something. But look, so it's encouraging, and that's really good. What will be a joy? Can we, some way, get together? That's another PhD I didn't suggest, which is why the uniqueness. Right, so it's 51 PhDs now. Okay, why the
I'm doing it.
Okay, okay.
You be, that is my PhD. I'm looking through why Chile took Ramabai's.
Oh, wow, that's it then.
There it is.
Well, rejoice, rejoice. Yeah, I've got it now. Look,
Okay,
so can we connect a little bit then? Can we afterwards? Can we have some details? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's great news.
Let me close with a final question,
Oh.
right?
Don't
We're at that time.
talk.
And you're a sociologist. All right, so one of the
Don't just label me that.
all right, but maybe not a reason in that I have noted around this table and around most mission studies that anything that champions someone as a model or an example is usually torn down. And there's reasons for
Yeah.
that, because it's seen as hagiography.
Yeah.
I've had that criticism launched against me in terms of my writing on Wong Meet Dao in that regard, and some of it's fair, and it's one thing I've had to rethink. But it seems to me that most scholarship coming from sociology and other frameworks feel that it's not honest unless it talks about the lacks, the holes, the flawed aspects of person. So take even someone like Mother Teresa, who's been treated in tremendously honorific ways and that kind of thing. But all things have come out about her darker sides and that kind of
Lack of faith, as she put it.
no, but even in terms of how she treated others and that kind of thing. Do you think this is a time when we can iconicize in the way it's been done in the past? And is that acceptable and allowable in our modern postmodern age? Or must it be a deconstruction of these figures? And what are the implications of that?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I know as a human being, I need models that I aim for. But we seem to live in a society where all those are torn down. And particularly now in mission studies, so there's no norm by which to model and shape our own lives. And I'm distressed by that somewhat, that we're actually in a massive mode of deconstruction rather than something of seeing people as models and things to emulate in terms of our lives.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I'll reflect on that on my drive home.
Okay.
One of the things I was doing is going back to the pioneer of mission, that's Jesus. And I was wondering how my relationship is with him in terms of what you're saying. So I'm a preacher now. And hagiography isn't something that isn't a very good description of my relationship with Jesus. Not hagiography, with the Father, and I know one day I will kneel, but it's much more the Jesus. I mean, this is Mazunda, this is the walking Jesus, the weeping Jesus. This is he talks about an Indian Jesus, which is one of us. And so when I'm with the youngsters, I was with the little one yesterday, Ollie, he was crying on my shoulder. Jesus wasn't to me very far away, but so it's not, anyway. So just to say that this isn't hagiography. So when Mira Kosambi said you've got to do what Mike Margaret did for, because he did, the book was called Something Beautiful for God. Margaret was a globally connected journalist. journalist and writer, brilliant one. This is trying to describe Ramabai. I mean, the term in England is warts and all. That's Oliver Cromwell's picture, which is describing. And she didn't want. I mean, as I said, I mean, she didn't want this, let alone anyone else. And so it's all about how can we draw people to Jesus. But yeah, so she was a real human being, and those close to her were able, and including the person I met, described Ramabai in the round. So I was relieved to know she was a human being, not an ethereal saint. I mean, to get what she had done, to get it done, I mean, to build a church, to build a community of 2,000 people, with it all in her head. She designed the church, she was the clerk of works, she was running the 60 places, she was translating the Bible. I mean, this is why you can't believe it. I can't believe it, but it's true. She had to be, can you not see, she had to be forceful and direct and make decisions. I mean, 700 workmen arriving, and she's got to get the whole thing done. She's got to organise it and care for the sick. So she can't be saying, let's sit around and let's talk about this as a committee for the next 30 days. And so she's well known for her fact that she is a yes and a no. But we could, yeah. But I think that's a very good point. What she's trying to do is not remotely. She didn't even want her name to be associated with Mukti, so she didn't want to be Pandita Ramabai Commission. She didn't want that. What she wanted was this model for change, which derives from Jesus, for change in India. So it's more like the kingdom. So I think she's a child of her time. If we can get the message across, when the film comes up, where's the big film? The only question is, will it be Chollywood or Hollywood? In my view, I think this could be the breakthrough. I think this could be an Indian film for the world. And when the film comes out, I think the risk will be that something of her greatness comes up, because I can see I can see these moments when she's just stunning in her brilliance. What I'm going to say, just her oratory. I was brought up on Churchill, and her oratory is just unparalleled. Just one thing, and the film will show that. It'll show everyone cheering. The whole thing. But on the other hand, what this is trying to do is to say it's all here. Now, can we work on this with integrity? I think that's with the integrity we have. So I don't, the way I see this, it's 1.25 kilograms. One of the reviewers weighed it. He said it's heavy, right? So it saved me weighing it. It's heavy.
Why is there no ebook?
The Kindle edition is one of the last ways.
What?
The Kindle edition is.
The reason is because sadly the wife of the Indian publisher died, and so he was delayed. So we've actually, that's why.
Oh,
So we produced the work for it months ago,
right.
but it's all ready to roll. But unfortunately, not with the footnotes, and so the hundreds of thousands of footnotes won't be there. But I see this in the Anglo-Saxon, which is my second language, Anglo-Saxon. So brought up in this place with Tolkien's and this, is a word hoard. So this is a treasure box. And what I've done is to, for OCMS and so on, go into the treasure box and find, so if you're going to study revival, the chapter on revival, I worked on for 2 years to look at the study, that's Chile and what's going on around the world, to look at what the scholars were saying. And so that's a treasure box for that. And so in other words, and other people won't be interested in that. So they might want a Bible translation, you see, that's another thing. Or others, Mukti, that is studying Mukti, that is the place she set up, holistic Christian mission. There it is. It's for all people. It's heart, mind, and soul and spirit, isn't it? It's bless you, Tom. It's been good. And it's a great day around this table with the successful
That's good.
PhD, isn't it? Been good. We had a good talk about the deep south, didn't we? Which was good. That's right. Got some things off our chest
The
about
Mid-Atlantic.
the middle.
Anyway,
Good to be with you, and in a sense, I apologise about the punch. But every reviewer so far has said, look, Keith is writing with a passion.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Well, let's put our hands together. Thank you.
Is there a copy of this book that will stay in our
Well, I
library?
hope there is one, there should be one in the library, but there's one here that I'm